Welcome, guys. Our today's topic is conceptual dependency, which is our next part in unit number 5. Okay, the conceptual dependency, that is also CD, is a theory of how to represent the kind of knowledge about events that is usually contained in natural language sentence. Okay, when the conceptual dependency was designed, there are some goals which are considered. That is, the goal is to represent the knowledge in a way facilitated that facilitate drawing inference from the sentences, and the second one is independent of language in which the sentence was originally stated. Means whatever the language in which the original sentence was written, your conceptual dependency is able to represent the knowledge logically. Okay, in the the conceptual dependency representation of sentence is built on the conceptual primitives that can be combined to form the meaning of words in any particular language. It has been implemented in variety of programs that read and understand a natural language text. Unlike semantic nets, which provide only structure into which nodes representing information at any level can be placed, conceptual dependency provides both a structure and a specific set of primitives at a particular level of granularity, out of which representation of particular piece of information can be constructed. Okay, while designing the conceptual dependency, there are some primitives which are suggested by Schenck and Abelson in 1977. Some of them are, means we can say that these are the primitives are suggested while designing a conceptual dependency. Here they are. The first one is a trans. It is the transfer of an abstract relationship. For example, give, take, etc. Then the second one is p trans. It is the transfer of physical location of an object. For example, go, come, etc. The third one, propel. It is the application of physical force to an object. For example, push. Next one, the move. It represents the movement of a body part by its owner. For example, the kick or the boxing, like that. Next one is grasp. Grasp of an object by an actor. Okay, the grasping of things by an actor. Actor means the one who is taking an action or who is making an action. Then ingestion of an object by an animal. For example, we eat. Next one is expel. It is the expulsion of something from the body of an animal. For example, cry, sneeze, etc. Then next one is m-trans. It is the transfer of mental information. For example, telling or suggesting, etc. Next one is m-build. It is building new information out of the old. Okay, for example, you are given with some sentences and you are told that find the conclusion. Then if you find some conclusion, that you are deciding something from the available information, that is called as the m build. Means this is the use of m build. The next one is speak. it is the production of sound. For example, say. The next one, attend, focusing of a sense organ towards a stimulus, that is the, for example, listen. Okay, listening is the example of attend. After understanding the primitives, the next set of conceptual dependency building blocks is the set of allowable dependency among the conceptualization described in the sentence. Okay, so there are four primitive conceptual categories from which dependency structure can be built. The first one is the act, ACT, small s. It represents the action. The second one, PPs, it is the object. Next one is AAs, modifier of action, and the last one is PAs, that are called as the modifiers of PP. See here above the second number we are having the object. So if you want to modify that object to represent the thing as a primitive, we are having PAs. Okay, so the dependency structures are themselves conceptualization and can serve as a component of larger dependency structure. After understanding the primitives for designing the conceptual dependencies, to design the conceptual dependency we have to follow a set of rules. Okay, there are 13 rules which are written while designing a conceptual dependency structure. The first one here is PP double arrow act. It describes the relationship between an actor and the event that the action taker causes. Okay, this is a two-way dependency since neither actor nor an event can be considered as a primary because both are interdependent on each other. We cannot take any one of them as a single. Okay, then the rule number 2, that is the it describes the relationship between a PP and a PA that is being asserted to describe it. Many state description such as height are represented in CD as a numeric scales. Then rule number 3, it describes the relationship between two PPs, one of which belong to the set defined by the other. Okay, here the rule number 3 describes the relationship between two PPs in that one PP belongs to same and another PP is belongs to other set. The next one, the fourth rule is PP pointed by PA. It describes the relationship between a PP and an attribute that has already been predicated of it. Means the direction of an arrow is towards the PP being described. Next, rule number 5. What is that? PP pointed by double arrow. What does it mean? That it describes the relationship between two PPs, one of which, see here, I forgot to write PP below that. See here, it is the rule number 5, that is PP pointed by the double PP, so by double arrow. Okay, now rule number 6, the act pointed by single arrow by double PP. This means that it describes the relationship between an act and PP, that is the object of that act. The direction of arrow is towards the ACT, since the context of the specific act determine the meaning of the object relation. Okay, now the next rule number 7, it describes the relationship between an act and the source and the recipient of act. See here, ACT is the recipient, that's why the R is written over there. The PP on the upper side is the act, and the PP at the down, it is the source. Okay, so it describes the relationship between an act and the source and the recipient of act. Okay, the next rule number 8, see what the rule number 8 says. It describes the relationship between ACT and the instrument with which it is performed. The instrument must always be a full conceptualization, not just a single physical object. You have to conceptualize fully before applying this rule. Okay, next rule number 9. See what the rule number 9 says. It describes the relationship between an ACT and its physical source and destination. Okay, see, source and the destination are given here, and it describes the relationship between the act. Okay, the rule number 10 represent the relationship between the PP and a state in which it started and another in which it is ended. See here, what are the PP? I am saying PP and PAs. Okay, what are these? Are the ACTs are action, PPs are object, AAs are modifier of actions, and PAs are modifiers of PPs. Okay, remember that. Then the rule number 10, again, what is rule number 10? It represents the relationship between PP and the state in which it started and another in which it is ended. Okay, so we'll move towards the next rule, that is the rule number 11. What does the rule number 11 says? Rule number 11 are two types. Okay, the relationship here is describe the relationship between one conceptualization and another that cause it. Okay, the thing happened and the reason for it. Then see here, the arrows indicate the dependency of one conceptualization on another, so point in the opposite direction of implication arrow. The two forms of the rules describe the cause of an action and the cause of state change. Okay, here are here are two things or two rules described, in which first represent the cause of action and second represent the cause of state of change. Next, the rule number 12, it describes the relationship between the conceptualization and the time at which event describes was occurred. The time, if you want to represent the time in with the help of conceptual dependency, here we are having the rule number 12. Then the rule number 13. So what is rule number 13? Rule number 13 describe the relationship between the conceptualization and another, that is the time of the first. Means, for example, the model of human information processing system guys, here we are having one more rule, that is the rule number 14. What is that rule? The rule number 14 is what is rule number 14? It is like this. And the PP is over here. What does the rule number 14 says? It describes the relationship between a conceptualization and a place at which it was occurred. Okay, we are there are some kinds of tenses which are included in every kind of sentences, because there are some things which has been occurred in the past, there are something which are going to happen in future, there are something which are happening currently. So to represent this, there we are having the tenses in our particular any kind of languages. Okay, so how these tenses are represented? Here the small p represent the past tense, small f represent the future tense, small t it represent the transition, the ts start transition, the tf finish transition, the k continuing, question mark interrogative, and the slash represent the negative, and nil represent the present, and c represent delta represent the timeless, and c represent the conditional. So these are the set of conceptual tenses. It is also proposed by Shank in 1973. Okay, see, there are three ways by which we can represent the knowledge using the conceptual dependency model. Okay, so that it should facilitate the reasoning with the knowledge. The first way is fewer inference rules are needed than would be required if knowledge were not broken down into primitives. Means what? If you don't break your knowledge into different kinds of primitives, you don't need as much as rule whatever generally needed. Means you just require the less number of rules to represent your knowledge with the help of CD. Then the second way to represent the CD is that many inferences are already contained in the representation itself. Inferences, the presence of inferences if you are having as number of inferences in your sentences which are already present in there, so you can easily represent the knowledge with the help of CD. The last way is that the initial structure that is built to represent the information contained in one sentence will have holes that need to be filled. So what does it mean? If your sentence is already written and there are some flaws in that sentence, okay, not grammatically but for building your knowledge so these flaws are called as holes, and these holes can be served as an attention focuser for the program that must understand ensuring sentences. Okay, these holes will help your sentence, help your knowledge to understand. That is, these are the ways to represent the conceptual dependency. Now we have one example for it. The sentence written over here is that I gave the man a book. See how it is represented. See this diagram. Okay, this is how we had represented the above sentence, that is I gave the man a book, with the help of this conceptual dependency structure. See here we are having some, whatever the symbols we had used are having some meaning. Okay, the arrow indicate the direction of dependency. Okay, the single arrow, what it indicate? It indicates the direction of dependency. Then the double arrow indicate a two-way link between actor and the action. The small p indicate the tense, which we had already seen. The next one, the word a trans is one of the primitive act used by the theory. It indicates the transfer of possession, means something is holded by other. If previously I am having something and I am giving it to someone, okay, this is the transfer of possession. Then the small o indicate the object case relation, and the r indicate the recipient case relation. Okay, who means it indicate the relation for the recipient, means where your flow is going. Okay, where is the recipient? The arrow is pointed by it with the help of r. Okay, this is all about the conceptual dependency. Thank you.